All right, folks, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our January virtual open house. My name is Jim Hopes, and we have the whole crew here together from the Suncoast Center for Fine Scale Modeling. It's a new year, it's January. Happy New Year to everybody. Hope it's starting out well, and we hope it's better than 2020. So we have a lot to cover today. I'm going to jump right into it so you get a sense for what's happening here today. We have the latest photos and some short videos on our displays and narration. We update those all the time. You'll see a bunch of new stuff if you've been with us before, and I know a bunch of you have. John Addison's here. He's got a segment on how to use acrylic caulk for realistic water. So we got about 3 minutes of video there, and we have some other pictures going to show that John will be giving us some detail on. We have a tribute today to our friend Tim Godfery, who unfortunately passed away a couple of months ago. Been a member of our group for a long time and was a good contributor. We're going to show you some of the work that he has in the museum. And then also we'll be talking about perfecting ocean waves. Frank has been, he's got a submarine diorama. If you've been with us before, you've seen various parts of the construction that we have featured, but he's perfected a method for ocean waves that look really good. So he's going to show us how that works. And then lastly, focus stacking or photo stacking to produce more dramatic photos. And that's essentially taking multiple photos and software layers them on top of each other and it creates a pretty dramatic effect. So we'll talk about how to do that to help you get some really good looking and dramatic photos of your models. So if you think about the center, those of you who have been here before or have been on these webinars before, you know it's crowded. There's a lot of people there. We haven't had an open house since February of last year. Now, we are discussing right now about possibly doing a soft reopening in March, but we'll keep you posted on that. We probably would have some capacity restrictions and masks depending on what the rules and regulations are at the time, but we're hoping to be able to do at least a soft reopening in March and then pick it up in the months after that. So that's why we're not open today. This will be our normal open house day. You can see people here looking at our clinics. We have the modelers stage there. Various layouts. We got 5 operating layouts. This is Joe Carrillo working with our guests where people actually operate the O-scale layout, the Lakeshore Industrial Railway. And there you get a picture on that same side of the main hall there in the museum. This is the edge of the Sundance Central, the 1 to 20.3 modular layout that is the centerpiece of the museum. You get another view from that same angle on the right side as you walk down. You see the various displays, military models. We've got about a dozen of those dioramas. Muskrat Rambles back there. That's the ON30 layout that was built by Australian modelers. So you get a sense for what it looks like. This is the other side as you walk down left side of the main hall. That's Charlie Belcher. You may recognize from Channel 13. He comes out, does his morning show from the center all the time. We do build things here. We got workshops in the back. Here's some work that we had done in the past on the O-scale layout that I just showed you a picture of. This is what it was under development. So a lot of the layout work happens in the workshops that we have in the back of the building, and the modeling mostly happens at home, and then we bring it up there and put the elements together. You can see here in the back shop working on some backdrops of the O-scale layout. And Tim is there in the red shirt that we'll be paying tribute to here in just a few minutes. So we're going to go to our first topic here. This is John Addison on using acrylic caulk to create water. So John, you can unmute at this point, but I think what we're going to do here is I'm going to begin with that 3-minute video that you put together and I edited for you, and that will give us an overview of the topic. And then we'll proceed with the slides and have you do a little bit of narration. So I'm going to, let's start with the video to get the basics down, and we'll come back after the video and go to the slides. So folks, here's what we put together. This is posted on our channel as well.
Hi everybody, John Addison here again, and we're going to talk about how to do this water right here. As you can see, it comes out really nice, and we use this product right here by DAP called Crystal Clear Caulking. Okay, we're going to get started. Hello folks, we're back, and I'm going to show you now in this little boat diorama I have that I've colored all the water already underneath there. And I'm going to put some dabs of caulk here, and now I'm going to spread it with my brush like so. And the more caulk you put down, of course, the longer it takes to dry, and also the bigger your waves will be, and you get more of a gnarly look. This is what you do right here. Now the beauty of this thing is that you can later on come back in an area, maybe you're doing a big harbor or something, you can come back and add docks and stuff just by putting down more caulk and pressing the docks right into the wet caulking. And then it'll look just like it comes out of the water when you're done. So it's very easy to do. You can see some other areas here. This will all dry clear everywhere. And then I'll come back and show you later on how we finish it. And we'll get back with that in just a little bit when this is dry. Hey everyone, we're back. And I'm going to talk to you now about how to finish off these this water situation that we have here. And as you can see, this is, we had to wait for the caulk to dry, which took about 24 hours to dry really well. This product right here is what we're going to use now to seal it. It's Mod Podge, but it's a super brilliant Mod Podge. And I find this works the best. I take the top off here, put a little on my brush, and I'll just do this little area right here. And the brush is good for like getting in amongst the rocks and all that kind of stuff. And the nice thing about this product is it dries fairly quick. About an hour from now it'll be dry. Where I don't need a brush, I'll usually rub it in with my fingers, kind of not real vigorous, but just kind of slow, kind of move it all around like that right there. And the great thing about this is if you want to rejuvenate your water, then all you need to do is use some of this and you can rejuvenate any of your water you've already done with it. You just take a soft rag and you clean it off with distilled water, and then when that's done, you come back and just use the Mod Podge over the top of it. And here is an example of Mod Podge over the top of the caulking. This right here is a polyfiber that we use to make waterfalls, especially waterfalls where you push this into the wet Mod Podge. And then over here you can see the same thing, and you can see the depth of the water. And of course, here's an example of an alpine type lake that I did earlier. You can see the importance of coloring, the shading, and all that stuff. That's very important before you put any caulk or anything else on it. So that concludes our clinic, and I hope you guys learn something and go out and have some great modeling.
Okay, so we are back live. So John, that was the overview. I'm going to run through some slides here, and you can give us a little bit of background and narration on this. I'm presuming you can see the screen now, right?
Yes, I can see the screen.
Okay, so this first picture here, tell us a little bit about the method. It looks to me like you just applied this and it hasn't dried yet, right?
Well, this is an example of what I was talking about earlier. I had this building built for a while and I decided to make it a bait store, and so I added details to it. Then I built the dock on the workbench. And then where this sits, there was a big rock in the way in the water, so I had to dig the rock out of there, and it was in Envirotex, and so I had to get it out and fill it with plaster and then recolor the bottom. And then I redid the water. As you can see here, this is the wet caulk. And if you put your little barnacles and seaweed, whatever it is, on the bottom of your pilings, and you press it right in there, when it dries, it looks just like it's coming right out of the water. And this applies to like boats. A lot of my boats in the harbor, I did the same thing. I built the boat, and then I added a bead around the edge of the boat, the bottom of the boat, and then sunk it right in the harbor where I wanted it to be. And of course, the caulk pressed out, and then I took a small brush and teased it around to make it look, the boat look like it was in the water. And it works every time, no matter what you're doing. You want to add anything to your harbor, you know, a lighthouse, whatever. It works every time to just make stuff look like it's coming out of right out of your water.
So I have a question for you, John. How long does it take for this to dry and become clear?
Well, when you put this much down, like I have right here, it takes probably 24 to 48 hours. This is probably more like 48 hours. I left this, and I think I came back a week later to seal it and stuff.
Yeah, the other thing I was wondering, using this method, even the water that you can see that is already dried and has the color underneath it, it looks as though when you use the acrylic clear, you can't get a flat surface like you might with casting resin. Is that right?
Well, you can't get it that flat, but you can get it where it looks like just a wisp of the wind across the water. If you take your finger and push it down and rub it around and use a little bit, will go a long way, and you can make a pond or something look that like it's just got a wisp of wind across the surface. That you can do. Otherwise, you're going to end up with water similar to what you see in my harbor here.
Okay. Yeah, so here's another shot with the boats. Is this that same building when it's dry then?
Yeah, the caulk under the building is dry, and now I've started adding rental boats and more pilings and stuff like that. I just push them right into the wet caulk, and of course the caulk is real sticky, so it just kind of holds everything there. And again, the boats just look like they're coming right out of the water.
So John, where we have the bait wells there, where the guy's got the bucket, did you make that water out of the same material?
Yes, it is. It's made out of the same stuff. I just smoothed it way down, and then I put a layer of Mod Podge over the top of it.
Okay. Now here's another shot of that same building, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then I guess the next shot here shows what it looks like when it dried around those boats that you essentially put in the water, right?
Yeah, this was taken like a week later or so when I came back to the center. And yeah, this is what it looks like when it's dry. And you finish it off with the Mod Podge to seal it all. You have to seal the caulking because otherwise it's a dust magnet and it will just, it'll pick up dust, any kind of dust at all.
Right. Yeah, I've used the Mod Podge, the Brilliant as well, even on the back of window glazing. I think you told me about that on some buildings where they might have the older style glass.
Yeah, it works good for that. If you put it on the inside of the of your glass of your building, of your plastic, it makes it look like it's an old-timey glass that they used to have in buildings, and it has kind of that look to it. Looks very much like it.
So this is in your harbor. It's Silverton Central, right? The layout there.
Yeah, the layout here at the Suncoast Center where I'm at right.
So there is no casting resin on any of this. This whole water surface is from this acrylic material, the caulk.
Well, there's a story behind that. Originally this was an Envirotex pour, and of course it was real smooth and real pretty. And then I went on a road trip up to Timonium in the wintertime in January, and it got really cold. And we went on a little layout tour I had set up, and well, what ended up happening was that the Envirotex cracked, and from the cold weather and stuff, because it sat in 15-degree weather for a couple of days in the trailer.
Yep.
And so I had to have a solution here, and you know, Dave had showed me this crystal clear caulk because I've never been a fan of caulking because regular clear caulk does not dry clear, and I never liked it. But he showed me this crystal clear caulk he did on a diorama he did, and I went, yeah, you know, that just might work. So then I just colored I sprayed the harbor with some dull coat, the Envirotex, and then I just colored it. And then I went over the surface of it with this caulk, and the rest is history, as they say. Okay,
cool. Let's go on to our next shot. This is a different building, a different display.
Yeah, this is a tribute. This is a diorama that's also here at the center, and this is a tribute to a couple of friends of mine that unfortunately passed away. And there's again, you can see the water here. It's a Florida type layout diorama scene, and there's a good example of the water and stuff like that. And it's sometimes certain times of the year the water gets like this in Florida, and it's real pretty and stuff like that. And you just have to have conditions be perfect and low wind, but it can get really colorful like this. And of course, down in the Keys, you see that more than around here.
So John, what did you use for the barnacles and the plants at the base of the dock posts?
Well, what I do is I take tacky glue and mix it with a little black, and it turns gray. And while that's wet, I mix a couple kinds of colors of flocking. Um, and I mix like a light green and a dark green, and I mix some black pepper with that. And then I kind of dip them in the tacky glue, and then dip them in the pile of the flocking and the pepper, and let it dry. And then when it's dry, I take and coat it with the Mod Podge, and that gives you the wet barnacle look, like the tides went out and the barnacles are exposed, and it works very well.
That's like black pepper from like a pepper grinder. It's got a little bit of coarseness to it.
I'm sorry, what was that?
The black pepper is like from a pepper grinder, like coarse black pepper that gets you the
Yeah,
barnacle.
pepper, a box of pepper you buy from the can of pepper you buy from the store. It's just that kind of pepper. I don't grind it at all. I want it to be smaller.
Right.
And so that's why.
All right. So let's continue on with that scene. Here's a very interesting scene. So pretty realistic there, John.
Yeah, I've gone kind of crazy here. This is something they do in the Keys. They dump the last night's catch out. They go out in the little channel and they dump it, and all the tarpon and sharks and even kingfish show up to eat this stuff, man. It's pretty wild scene. I've been fishing by these guys, waiting. You'll hook up with a tarpon or a shark or something every single time. It's pretty cool.
And where the sea monsters are breaking the ocean surface, what is the white there? That's fiber fill?
Yeah, that's polyfiber. It's white polyfiber.
And then you did it with the Mod Podge, the Brilliant?
Yeah, the Mod Podge and the caulking and the whole 9 yards. You stick the shark into the caulking and let it dry, and then come back and start using the polyfiber and everything else. And I couldn't find, these are a little large. I couldn't find S-scale sharks. And then after I did this, I found them. Sharks are like ocean sharks. Sharks get pretty big, so.
Well, that's a good point. You got to coat the animals as well, because they would be wet coming out of the water.
Right. I coated the sharks where they were the Mod Podge, so they were look wet and stuff.
So here's another shot in the harbor, right? Your boats.
Yeah, out of 2 of the boats, and again, these boats are both scratch built, and then I sunk them right into the wet caulking when I was ready to install them. And there's an example of the boat just setting in the harbor when I was taking a picture of it.
Okay.
And the ice in there also is interesting. That's in the back hull there. That is actually you take a CD, like a CD carrier, that the CD comes in, and it's clear. If it's clear plastic, you break it up and put it in a coffee grinder and grind it up, and it looks like crushed ice.
Interesting.
And then you add on what you want, and then you paint it with a Mod Podge, Super Brilliant, to make it look wet. And it looks just like crushed ice.
Yeah, that's good. So, we use the coffee grinders all the time. They're great for scenery or bringing even, stones down to smaller size. I hadn't thought about putting a CD cover in there. Yeah. All right, here's another shot. We're back in the harbor there, right?
Right. And again, you can see the boat. I built that boat later on after the other boats. It's right there in the foreground. And did the same thing. I sunk it right in the wet caulk. I put a little bead of caulk around the edge of it. And this one I had a little bit more caulking on the bottom, and I pressed it down, and then took a small brush and teased it out away from the boat, so the boat would look like it was moving through the water. And I put a little trail behind it. Oh, this is a swamp scene here. And again, that's got a lot of Mod Podge in it. And I think there was some caulking underneath that. This is a swamp scene I did for a workshop I did up in New England.
What are the lily pads? How'd you get those?
Those are just, you take a paper puncher, and all you do is you just, you paint your paper green on both sides, kind of shade it, make it uneven kind of thing. And then you just cut them out and cut a little slit in there. after you cut the lily pad out, and then you just glue them on. There's an overview of the top of it, stuff like that.
Interesting. So here you are using the acrylic caulk in what presumably is a still area, but it still looks fine. There's a little bit of ripple on the water, but it doesn't look like big waves, right?
Right. It just looks like, the water's moving, and it's alive. It's a kind of a live swamp and stuff like that. It's kind of a windy day, but it's that's just kind of how it was. And what it was at the workshop is people had to build a swamp like this. They had 3 hours to do it, so it
Good.
was quite a chore.
All right. And then this picture, where's this taken?
This is at the Suncoast Model Railroad Club down in Largo, Florida. And this is the backdrop I painted, and the water I did in the foreground is all magic water. But the water coming down the waterfall is the caulk, and with polyfiber into it.
Had it dry? Is the caulk still wet in this picture? It looks like it was maybe, huh?
What's that now?
Is that caulking a little bit wet still as where it's hitting the water? Is that going to dry clearer when it's finished, or does it stay?
Well, it dries clear, and then what you do is you paint the caulking with the Mod Podge and stick the polyfiber right into the wet Mod Podge, and it sticks real good. And then you can tease it out, add more Mod Podge. So you've got the illusion of moving water. And of course, you drag the caulk. If you're going to use it on a river or something, you drag it the same way, or a little stream like this, as you want the water to go. You have to drag it right over the rock face and everything else.
Right. Okay. And then this is an interesting scene. Where is this at Silverton?
This is the Sundance.
Okay.
Central, and this is a water I redid, and I added a bunch of polyfiber in there. After I did the caulk and everything, I did the Mod Podge, and then I added polyfiber in here and there to make it look like rapids and stuff like that. And you can easily overdo it. And this is another waterfall with you can see the polyfiber at the bottom of it.
Yep.
And the water looks like it's moving away from the waterfall, like it would be. And that's the illusion the caulk gives you when you drag it a certain way. Just drag it the way you want it to flow.
Okay. All right. Well, this has been very helpful, John. We're going to wrap up here, but tell us again what that material was that was in the video, so people wanted to pick it up. I guess you get it at Home Depot or Lowe's. It's DAP. What's it called?
It's made by DAP, and it's called Crystal Clear Caulking. And Lowe's and Home Depot don't have it a lot. We're lucky we have a hobby store down here that actually carries the caulking. But you can get it online, and you can sometimes find it at Ace Hardware. But it's got to be the crystal clear. Don't get the clear, because you'll be disappointed with the results.
Right. DAP Crystal Clear acrylic caulk, right?
And yes, and the Mod Pod's super brilliant. You can find that at Hobby Lobby or Walmart or somewhere like that.
Okay, great. John, this is wonderful. Thank you. By the way, if anybody has any questions, I know Keith is monitoring our chat area and he's answered a couple of questions already, but if you have any others, just put them in there and we will definitely get to them. Okay, let's move on to our next topic here. As I mentioned to you, unfortunately, we lost a good friend and member of the group here, and Tim Godfery, who passed away a couple of months ago. So we wanted to give a tribute to Tim here and show you some of the modeling work that he has in the museum. So this is one that he built. Dave, I don't know if you're live on the call, if you're able to pick up audio, or anybody knows the history on this particular display here. Yeah, apparently we don't have Dave live on the call. Yeah, so this is a processing mill. It's right around the corner from where you have the tipple for the iron ore mine. So I think it's related to that. You know, I wish I knew the story. I know Dave has the background, but this is definitely scratch built with various components. And so this is one of the things that Tim did. It's on display. It's permanent on display on the Sundance Central modular layout.
Hey, Jim?
Yes.
I think that's a Western scale stamp mill type thing that Tim built. And I think also the steam engine driving it is also Western scale models and stuff like that. And
Okay.
Tim was so enthusiastic about the Sundance and fell in love with it and just wanted to do something for it. And so that's what he did. He did. He wanted to build something, and so he did. He worked on it, and it came out very, very nice.
All right, so here's another example. This is also on the Sundance Central, where he's got, you know, the basically the shanty with the worker there, and all the details. He did the Jeep as well. I think it's probably a die cast that's been detailed and weathered, right?
Yes, I believe it is. Yes.
Okay, here's another example of a small shed kind of thing that he did. You know, again, what makes these things really stand out is all the detail, all the stuff, all the junk, all the things in storage, and you know, good job with the tar paper sides and things of that nature. So this is something else that Tim has on the Sundance Central layout. Did a lot of small buildings. Here's another example that is permanently installed on the layout. And so you can see once again all the details around, and pretty sure that this one was a scratch build. I don't have all the details on it. It's pretty nestled among the fir trees there, which we hope to be able to feature maybe in next month's virtual open house. But more about that coming up. Then we're switching over to the O-scale layout. He had a couple of things that he built here. This is a pedestrian bridge. Not sure where this came from exactly. Tim has had certainly a large and extensive collection of trains and accessories and buildings. And so this is one thing that he wanted to put in was the pedestrian bridge that crosses the yard there, the tracks on the Lakeshore Industrial Railway, and then built the dock, because that really comes right up to the water there, depicting roughly in the Cleveland, Ohio area, with some lakefront from Lake Erie. And here's another example. This is a barge that he did and weathered and painted and did all the material and so on. We got several scrap barges there. And the boat, I think, is a kit. Frank, I don't know if you're live. I think maybe you did the boat on this one, if I recall. And so, but Tim did the barge and all the detailing on that.
No, Dave did the boat, the tugboat. Dave did that one.
Okay. All right. So you did the other tugboat.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And so, you know, Tim was a good friend and he was always there. He was a big participant and did a lot of things logistically. His wife, Kathy, actually cleaned the center every week before we did the open houses. And Tim was always there with the projects and helping to build so many of the other things that we have as part of the group. So we're certainly going to miss him. You know, just as a little tribute to Tim, this is a very short video clip here, but this is how we like to remember Tim. Okay. So there you go. You see, Tim loved Shea locomotives. In fact, he's got a Shea that operates on the Sundance Central, and he had a chance to perform to be the engineer for the day. So he certainly was happy in that video. So Tim, we're going to miss you, buddy. But the good news is your work remains in the museum and as part of the legacy. Let's move on to our next topic. I mentioned the ocean waves. Frank's going to give us a little bit of a primer here, but this is a photograph of Frank's model, by the way, and all the water that he developed. You know, both that the sub is cutting through and is essentially porting from the sides on the sub. So I know, Frank, that this is your third round because I know you're a perfectionist. You didn't like the waves you had in the first couple, so you went in and did a third round, right?
Yeah, the first version of my ocean went into trash, and I just had two huge waves. It was just getting carried away, and I also had too many white caps. You know, they always say less is more. Well, I had more, which made it worse. So the second time around, I cut it down, and then I also modified some of the ocean waves on the coloring on the second one also, which made it my third version. So this is, my way of doing the water is on this particular one was with crumpled aluminum foil. Now, John showed you one method, and then I'm going to show you another method using crumpled aluminum foil. The base here is 2-inch thick styrene foam. It's an insulation foam, and you can buy this stuff at some hardware stores, and Home Depot and Lowe's carry it in a 1-inch size. So you just have to double it up, and you just cut it with a hot knife or a saw or anything that you want to cut it with. And then you use heavy duty aluminum foil and crumple it and then lay it back out. Now I glued it down with spray adhesive. So I sprayed the foam, and then I sprayed the back of the foil. And you got to be careful, because once those two tacky surfaces hit each other, you're pretty much committed to where it's going. So, and if you don't want to do that, then just spray one of the surfaces and then lay it down, and you'll get a little bit of movement time before it kind of sets up.
Okay.
All right, now here it was an example of my first one that I got rid of, but what I wanted to show you here was I put the sub hull in a very thin plastic bag, and then I put Gorilla Glue underneath it so that it would conform to the shape of the hull. And I just put some weight on top of it and let it dry overnight.
It's a good job of recycling those batteries, Frank.
Yeah, I like those batteries for weights. Now here's the colors that I used for my sea area. So on top of the aluminum foil, I painted it with gesso, which is basically a white paint, but I had a whole big container of gesso, so I used that instead. But you can just use white, acrylic white. And then the colors for the ocean are sea blue is your basic color, and then your highlight colors are clear green and clear blue. And believe me, they are clear. They go on really thin, but they're great colors. Now here I've got the base that I'm working on. You can see the hull, where the hull goes. It's all perfectly shaped to the bottom of the submarine. And the crumpled aluminum foil has been painted with the clear blue and the clear green. And I've got the sea blue coming up to the edges of it. Now you want to leave enough room on your clear and blue and green so that you can feather in that dark blue so that you don't see any kind of a line where your dark blue is. All right, see here, I've feathered in on the bottom side. I've feathered up to the blue and the green, just leaving a little bit of highlight. And you want to also cover over some of that, the clear blue, because obviously it's just too light. So
Yes.
Here's half of it done.
And when you're saying you're feathering in, you're just doing that with a brush, lightly feathering it in?
No, I'm using an airbrush. I should have
Okay.
said it. All the painting was done with an airbrush.
Okay.
Okay, now here is the whole thing done. And as you can see, it's the sea blue is a flat color. So you're gonna, now it's all flat, dull looking. So the next thing you're gonna have to do is put a clear color on. And I happen to have a Krylon gloss clear. So I hit it with the gloss clear. Now the waves are bouncing out at you and give it a nice shine to it.
Got it. And so what was it you used again to get the gloss on there?
Krylon gloss clear. It says just a regular old rattle can spray paint.
Yep. Lowe's or Home Depot. Oh,
Yeah, either one, anywhere. Hobby stores even carry Krylon sometimes. I know Hobby Lobby does. All right, now I wanted to change my model around. I looked at some photographs and saw some really nice bow waves coming off the submarine. So I wanted to have a crest where it curled over. So I took a plastic bottle and cut out a wave shape. And then I added those 3 tabs on there. And I cut slits into the wave that I formed. I took a piece of that gray foam again, the styrene foam, and shaped it into a shape of a wave. And then I punched in 3 little slits. And this will make the curl for the wave. Now, here's what I'm using to make my ocean waves. I've got Woodland Scenics Snow, Liquitex Gloss Heavy Gel, and I use a fan brush to put down the snow and Liquitex mixture, which I mix 50-50. If you're a little worried about it, you can, as you're mixing the snow into the Liquitex, go a little slow with it, and then it'll start to get too thick, and then you'll realize you got too much snow in there. So add a little more Liquitex, but don't go too big of an area, because when you work it, you want to be able to have a wet time. And if you put it on a little, it gets a thin spot, well, then it's going to dry on you before you get a chance to work it. So I use the fan brush to apply the snow, but then I come back and kind of trim it up with a wet, not totally wet, but just a dampened round head brush. And then I used 2 different palette knives, one for mixing and one for taking the Liquitex out of the container, because I didn't want to contaminate my Liquitex container with all kinds of junk. So I just used one for that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you where you got the Liquitex, but I see the Hobby Lobby sticker on there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, now this picture and the next picture are pictures of waves that I kind of like the idea. So here you can see the bow wave coming off. And then the submarine model I used is 144 scale. So the length of the submarine is 312 feet in actuality, but the model, the length of the deck is 24 inches. So I divided the picture up into 4 sections, which would, if I do this in full scale, they would be 6-inch sections. So I printed these out, and on the computer screen, I measured 6 inches. So I put the pictures back together. So I ended up with a 24-inch picture of how I needed to put my waves down. By making it full size, it gave me a really good idea of what I needed to do, the area. Now here's another one showing the bow wave coming off. And also on this one, you can see past the conning tower, you can see an area of sheet flow coming out from underneath that superstructure. Well, on the Gato class submarines, there was an opening where the water could just sheet flow out from under the deck. And that's an example of where that's coming out. And then you can also see a little further back, you see some water coming out, and that's one of the exhaust ports for the engines. Now here's the bow wave that I made. And it's hard to tell in this picture, but that piece of plastic bottle is actually forming the curl, but then the base of the wave is basically just a triangular piece of foam that I've worked in to the base. And I've started to apply the snow and the Liquitex gel together, and you just keep applying it. Now, in order to get this curl, I didn't want to put a whole lot of snow on at one time, because I wanted it to curl over. So if you put a whole lot on, it's going to be too heavy and it's just going to fall down. So I put a little on, let it dry overnight, come back, add another layer, come back, add another layer. I ended up with 3 layers of the snow on there to get the full dimension of the curl.
That is interesting. The snow in scale, when you look at it, does look like bubbles, about the same size, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
a froth that you would get. Here's an overhead shot of your pattern then.
Right. So this is kind of, it's not exactly like the photo, but I didn't want to get too heavy. Because my first model, I just had too much white water. So I wanted to just back off on it and let the mind fill in the rest of the necessary parts. All right, now in order to get that sheet flow going and coming out, I took cotton and from a pill bottle and just laid it out on a sheet of plastic. And then you'll see in the next picture. Okay, now I'm starting to streak out the cotton with the clear gel, the Liquitex gel. So now it's going into line streaks. Just brush it back and forth. And then in the next picture, you'll see I've done a whole bunch of it. And then I just tear it apart in whatever pieces I need. You can use a little pair of scissors. I let it dry, but some guys put it on wet. And however method you want to use, doesn't matter. But dry to me was easier because I could handle it. It wasn't all slimy because if it's wet, obviously you're going to get full of the gel.
You did this on what material? Is this clear, like thin plastic, like saran
Yeah,
wrap?
it's just a plastic packaging that I had. It just peels. Once it dries, it just peels right off.
You can take that entire piece and even the sharper edges will be intact.
Oh yeah, everything comes right off. All the little strings will come right off.
And how many coats did you say you put of the
Just
Liquitex?
one, just smear it out.
Okay.
So now you can see where I've got the sheet flow. I've cut it up and torn it into little strips. I didn't want to cut it because you don't want a cut edge showing up. So I tore the whatever pieces of cotton I wanted. If I wanted a thin piece where it's coming out of the limber holes, I just tore it real thin. Or if I wanted to have a wide piece where it's coming out from underneath that deck superstructure, then it came out that way.
So what are the holes here and what are they officially called?
Those are called limber holes. And the submarine started out in 1941 with just the limber holes along the top of the tank, the water tank, the ballast tanks. And then as the war went on, they started chopping holes everywhere just to try and get that water out. In fact, some of the submarines had along the entire deck, they had holes drilled in. And then they would also have holes drilled at the conning tower is actually called a fair water. And they would drill holes into that fair water and just to let more water out. Because the faster you get the water in and the faster you get it out, you surface or dive. So as the war went on, at the beginning, the submarines were diving in, say, a minute time. They could get that submarine down, which it might be too late. You got an airplane coming and you want to get the heck underwater. So they started drilling more holes in there so that the subs could dive faster. And some of the guys would run with their bow planes out already so that when it was dive, 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 they would have the planes out and they wouldn't have to go scrambling around to put them down. They could do something else. And they also would run with their forward ballast tank about half full, so that the sub was actually running nose down, so that when it came time to dive, they would hit it. And sometimes the guys that were not at their duty stations would run to the front to get more weight in the bow.
So you basically, this is the cotton material and you put all of the water streams coming down from these various holes, huh?
Right.
Just glued them in place?
Yep, with the Liquitex heavy gel. They're glued in with the Liquitex heavy gel.
Got it. Yes, this is another view so we can see what it looks like behind the sub, the trailing front.
Yeah, the stern view where the prop water wash is coming out.
Right. Yep. Yeah, so we have some additional pictures here of the model.
A good friend of mine, Jim Hopes, our narrator, added the sky and really finishes off these pictures and makes them look absolutely fantastic.
Yes,
that is just gorgeous, I'll tell you.
Yeah, and we've got another one here. Got a little bit of sunset there in the distance.
No, Jim, that's a sunrise, Jim.
Oh, sorry, that's right, because we're looking east to west. Yep, and so we've got that picture, and then there's the night shot, which is interesting.
Yeah, I love this shot here. Jim added the moon afterwards. Dave and I were looking at it one Wednesday when we had a chat, and we said, how about adding a moon? So he went and grabbed a moon and stuck it in there.
Yeah, that's on the Luminar 4 photo editing, which I did a little segment on that a couple months ago on the segment, but it's pretty versatile. So Frank, I know that you have a display case that you made too, right?
Yeah, I decided that the model needed a case because it's just way too fragile and people are going to knock stuff off. So I built the original base so that the bow protruded about a ½ inch off the base, because I thought that would look dramatic, with the bow coming off. So obviously you can't put a case on that. So I had to cut the edge of the foam off, attach another piece that was about 1.5 inches long, and blend in the paint and the foil and all that kind of stuff, and attach it so that the base would be long enough so that I could get a cover over it. So I just went to a plastic store in the neighborhood and bought a sheet of 1/8 inch acrylic and cut it on my table saw. Now the edges of I didn't have any way of flaming the edges where it gets crystal clear.
Yeah.
So I just used sandpaper. I used 320 sandpaper to start with to get rid of the saw marks. And then on top of that, I went with 600 wet or dry sandpaper. And then I took a razor blade on its edge and just scraped it. And that got rid of all the cut marks and left a nice smooth line. And then it was glued together with the plastic glue.
Okay. We got a
Not regular plastic glue, but plastic, glue for acrylic plastics.
right.
And then here's just a case in the corner. I just took my wood burner and put some cracks in it to make it look like it's a little older wood. And the wood I just got from Lowe's. It's their top quality pine, which is very clear, very straight, no knots, that kind of thing. Really nice wood.
Yeah, so it turned out beautifully. The case is gorgeous as well. If you want to know more about the details and building the case, if anybody wants, about 3 or 4 months ago, Richard did a segment on building these cases for displays, and following essentially the same method. And so, the best way to get a custom size case for your model is to build it. And so,
and now this particular case is pretty large. It's 30. The whole base of the wooden frame is 30.5 inches by 14 inches wide and 10 inches tall to the top of the case. So that's a pretty big piece of acrylic to handle, but you can do it if you're careful.
Yep. So enjoy the sub while it's at your house, Frank, because as soon as we reopen, eminent domain says it's headed to the Suncoast Center for Fine Scale Modeling. But you can,
I have it on top of one of my bookcases right now, and it's in this room with me, so I'm very happy with it.
you can bond with it, because soon we'll be taking it to the museum.
Okay.
All right, great work, Frank. This has been very helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so let's move on to our last topic of the day, and that is this issue of photo stacking or focus stacking. It goes by either of those two terms to give you more dramatic photographs. So, here's the high concept. I don't know how many of you are familiar with focus stacking, but, this is a shot I took right here in my office on my HO switching layout. And so the concept behind focus stacking is you're taking multiple pictures without moving the camera at all of the same thing with different focus levels. Because one of the things you run into, I'm sure when you're doing model railroad or any kind of modeling photography, is it's tough to get everything in focus in the picture. Now, you can do your f-stops if you have a nice camera and try to get depth of field, but still it's difficult to get everything in the picture in focus. So with focus stacking, basically, I think I do this on a grid of 4, probably about 16 different photographs. And each one has a focus. It's basically, I'll show you how I do it on my iPhone. It's easy to do by putting the focus here. Oh, let me go back. This part here, another shot here where this is in focus, this is in focus. I just follow a grid. And so you end up with 16 different photographs, and then you put it into a piece of software. I use the Helicon photo stacking software. It's cheap. It's like $34 a year for a license. And I'll show you how easy that is. I'll do a little demo for you here in a minute. But several things happen when you do. Everything in the picture is in focus because there's a photograph of every part of this picture that's in focus that got into the stack. And secondly, as you stack these things up, you get a pretty good three-dimensional look. Gives you the feel that, you know, you're actually in the scene. Here's another example on that layout. You can see the three-dimensional look there. Again, I've made this shot with my iPhone and 35 millimeter camera and digital camera many times, but it's still tough to get everything in focus. But here, I think this is probably 16 different pictures that were put into the focus stack. And so everything is in focus and you really get that three-dimensional 3D look. Earlier this week, I was over at John Brennan's layout here in Tampa and just added some additional photographs that I could show you today. Again, here's a good example. This one's got plenty of light on it, but you can see that everything is in focus and there's really good smoothness and depth behind from the locomotive to this boxcar. You get the sense that it's much more three-dimensional and a dramatic look. And while I was at John's, I also shot this, my 280, next to the coal tipple there in mine. And so, you know, again, you can see you get a nice smoothness and richness and detail in the pictures in each of the objects. I went back and did a little editing with the Luminar on this too and added some sky, etc. But you get the sense, again, that you got this three-dimensional look as you look deeper into these rows of hopper cars. Here's another example I shot at John's again, and I'll show you how to stack this particular photograph. It's pretty easy to do once you get the sense of it. You almost feel like, I added the birds later, but they almost feel like they're going to be flying out right towards you over your head at the moment. But again, this is a pretty deep shot and everything is in focus from here down to here in the foreground. Everything is in focus. And the only way you get that is by stacking the multiple photographs. So there's really two things to remember when you're doing this. One is you need to have a camera and a tripod. You cannot do this by holding your iPhone or a camera still. Because if you're taking 16 different shots of the same scene, if you move it, then when you stack them, they're going to be out of focus. Okay, they need to be able to stack up and mate with each other. So you see there is my little, I have a pretty good tripod. It's a decent tripod, but I mean, it's not like, you know, a $500 tripod. I think it was a $100 tripod. And I have the attachment there for the iPhone. You can see what I was doing. I'm framing the picture so that, you know, and I tighten all this down so that your phone or your camera is not moving, because again, that'll destroy your final product if you get too much movement on these individual pictures. Now, for those of you that have iPhones, it's pretty easy to focus on a particular part. You see, that's my finger touching the screen. As soon as you do that, you get this, okay? And that shows you basically where that particular photograph is going to get its maximum focus. As you can see here, this is very much in focus, but over here on this side, the stuff is out of focus because we don't have enough depth of field to be able to get that done. So what I do is I'm touching the screen here, 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 and here, and then moving a little bit to the right and doing another grid, 1, 2, 3, 4. As you touch the screen, of course, you have to be careful to make a very light touch. It doesn't take much to get that to focus for that particular shot, but make sure that you don't move the camera. Here's another example. This is in perfect focus down here, but it's really blurry up here. So, you know, I didn't show you all 16 photographs, but you can see what I'm doing, essentially moving on the grid on the face of the camera. There's another example there. So, you know, the other thing is you cannot touch your camera to take the photo shoot, or if you're using a digital camera on a tripod, you can't use the shutter on the camera. You're just going to move it too much. And so I basically have this Bluetooth enabled, you know, clicker. And so basically when I get the shot ready to go, I just press that button and it shoots. And then I go take a very light touch to the next grid and then it shoots. And so that's the process for the camera part. I'll show you here. Let me jump out of this for a moment. Let's see, and I will open up the Helicon software. Let me move that over to the screen you're looking at. Here it is. Okay, so this is one of the pictures we just looked at. Again, all the pictures I imported are right here. And you can see each one is a little bit different and has a different part of the scene in focus. And so you take all of these photographs here, you load them into the system, and you can do that as a batch. It isn't that tough to get all those photographs in there. So I got all the photographs in there. They're all a little bit different. Then I go up to the render tab here and watch what it does. It'll render this thing in about 10 seconds. It'll go through that whole stack of pictures on the left and produce the finished picture on the right. So here's what it looks like. Yes, I do want to render this again. So here we go. See it moving through all the pictures, running through, and then you get the final product over here, and that's what you got. A good three-dimensional shot that is basically in focus everywhere. I find this between the iPhone and being able to, essentially touch the screen in a grid pattern and coming up the pictures, it's pretty easy to do. And with the software, it's very intuitive and very easy. There's like $34 to have a license for a year. For like $55, you can get a perpetual license. Of course, like every other software system, they have basic and then they have a mid-range and advanced. I did all this with the basic, basically all the focus stacking that's here. And so it is a really cool, it produces some really dramatic photographs, and it's pretty doggone easy to use. So let's go back to our PowerPoint here. Let's see. So here again, I have my remote control shutter. Okay, allows me to take the picture, in this case, 16 different pictures without touching the camera. So that's the camera part. Focus in on one segment at a time, stacking all those pictures, and you're using your remote control to essentially snap the picture so you don't move the phone. So by the way, we have we'll get commission on this. I just think it's a cool piece of software that you might want to play with. Understand that you can do this in Photoshop as well, and I have Photoshop elements, but I didn't see it in the Photoshop elements, and it seemed to be more difficult. This was pretty easy. And so this is, if you look for it, it's called Helicon Focus. It comes from the company Helicon Soft, and again, it's like $35 for a perpetual license. But you'll be pretty happy to start shooting some pictures with this, because if you take a look in the magazines, for example, a lot of the shots are done this way. And Greg Komar, who's here in the Tampa Bay group, and he and Gail have a fabulous layout. He shot some pictures for the convention when it was here of the Sundance Central using this method, and did some of John Brennan's layout. It's really a cool thing to do, and it's pretty easy to control. So again, if you have any questions about that, put them in the chat, and we'll be happy to answer those for you. So that pretty much concludes our material for today. Just a couple of reminders, our YouTube channel continues to grow. We get new subscribers every week. And last time I checked, our December open house had over 800 views. And so we have a lot of videos there. The video that you saw, that 3 minutes on that we did with John, with him doing the acrylic caulk water, that video is on there as a separate video. And of course, this entire 1 hour virtual open house will be on there soon, probably by tomorrow. So if you want to see it again, or go back and look at details, or share it with your friends. If you like the channel or any of the videos, be sure to hit that like button. We'd love to have you subscribe. When I posted that video on Friday morning, I think it was, of John with the acrylic water, it picked up like 55 views even before today, just because people are subscribed to the channel. Hit the bell button, you'll get notified whenever we put something new, and of course, share it with all your friends. And likewise, this is our website, finescalemodeling.org. If you're not on our mailing list, you can sign up for the mailing list there. And then you can also, I post the link to this webinar when it's live. I also post the link on there to the YouTube once I put it up. So make sure you're on our mailing list. That's how you find out about things like this. We're going to reopen at some point, hopefully a soft reopening in March, but there's directions on how to get there, and keep up to date on the events that we're doing. And there's also an online gift shop if you want to pick up any swag from the Suncoast Center for Fine Scale Modeling. So folks, we appreciate you being with us. Keith, I don't think we have anything unanswered, do we, in the chat? As soon as I hit
no, the only question came up on the software was what predicts the amount of photos that are taken, and I just said it was the software itself.
Yeah, well, the amount of photos you take is a decision you make, is how many photos you want to take at a scene. Some people take like 40 photos or 48 photos. I have found that for most of the modeling shots that I've been able to do and get some pretty dramatic effects, usually 4 by 4 by 4 by 4 or 16 shots is enough to get you the kind of clarity. and dramatic focus and depth of field. If you want to do more, you can do more. There's no, I think the limit on the focus stacking is maybe like 100 shots. And if you get the premium, there's some photographers that do fine scale, like insects and things of that nature, art pictures that are using almost 1,000 pictures. So, you know, I think the limitation is what you decide, how many pictures. 16 certainly, in my experience, has worked pretty well. All right, folks, thanks again for joining us. We will be doing this again the third Saturday of the month in February. And hopefully in March, we'll be reopening. We'll see, but you know, we'll keep you posted on everything. If you have any questions, please let us know. So thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you all soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.